Hey there, night dwellers. Welcome back to Nightmare Frequency. Before we descend into tonight's chilling tale, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, get cozy, and prepare yourself for another journey into the unknown.
The clock on Lydia's nightstand read 12:44 a.m. Rain whispered against the windows of her studio apartment, a rhythmic tap that might have been soothing under other circumstances. But tonight, something was off. The apartment, always a bit too quiet, felt hollow, like sound itself hesitated to linger too long. Even the rain seemed cautious. Lydia stared at the ceiling, earbuds tucked in, her phone playing a YouTube video softly. True scary stories to fall asleep. It was her guilty habit. She claimed it helped her sleep, but truth be told, it was about the adrenaline. That little shot of fear. She was hooked. The narrator's voice oozed calm dread as he detailed a chilling tale of a man who heard whispers through his walls every night, only to realize they were coming from inside his own apartment. She pulled the covers tighter. From the corner of her room, the floorboards creaked. She paused the video. Silence. Lydia sat up. Her eyes scanned the darkness. Her curtains swayed slightly, but the window was closed. She walked over, checking the latch. Locked. Just the drafty old building. Still, she felt something watching her. She clicked the flashlight on her phone and swept it across the room. Nothing. Of course not. She climbed back into bed, rolled over, and resumed the video. The story had moved on now to a teenage girl who dreamed of a shadow man every night. He would stand at her bedroom door, inch closer, then vanish. One night, she woke to find him at her bedside. Lydia grinned to herself, a nervous giggle rising. Okay, that's creepy, she whispered aloud. Then her phone screen flickered. The video froze. Wi-Fi again? She muttered, checking her signal. Full bars. The screen turned black. Then a voice, distorted, crackled through the earbuds. Stop listening. She yanked them out and stared at the phone. The screen blinked on again, but now it showed her apartment. Her. She wasn't recording anything. The image panned, jerky like handheld footage. It zoomed toward her closet. No, not hers. The image on the phone was from someone else's camera. Someone in the room. She dropped the phone, heart in her throat. The bed creaked beneath her as she scrambled to the edge. She fumbled for the light switch and flipped it. The bulb popped. Darkness again. Lydia backed into the farthest corner, hyperventilating. She grabbed her phone, trembling hands trying to dial 911. A soft knock came from the closet door. Tap, tap, tap. Who's there? She croaked, her voice barely audible. No answer. The closet creaked open an inch. Lydia grabbed the nearest object, a lamp with no bulb, and edged forward, adrenaline overriding fear. She kicked the closet open. Nothing inside, except her earbuds were there, but she'd thrown them on the bed. Something cold brushed her ankle. She screamed and bolted to the hallway. She pounded on her neighbor's door, frantically. No answer. She ran to the stairs, every nerve alert to the sound of footsteps that weren't hers. The air felt colder, thicker, like she was breathing through cotton. In the stairwell, she checked her phone again. No signal, just one notification, new video uploaded. She clicked it. The title read, Lydia Sleeps, But Not Alone. It was footage of her sleeping, from the foot of her bed. She didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Lydia packed a bag and booked a hotel. She didn't go back to the apartment. Not for days. When she returned, it was with a friend, Marcus, who'd agreed to help her clear it out. The building manager let them in. Everything was as she left it. Mostly. Except the mirror in the hallway. A word was scrawled across it in greasy, black residue. Stay! Was that here before? Marcus asked, voice tight. No, Lydia said. Definitely not. They worked quickly, stuffing boxes with clothes, books, her laptop. Then Marcus opened the closet. He went still. Lydia rushed over. On the back wall of the closet, a large hole had been cut, roughly the size of a crawlspace. Black plastic sheeting hung loosely, as though hastily nailed into place. Beyond it, darkness yawned. You didn't know about this? He asked. No, she said, stomach churning. No, I didn't. Marcus lifted the plastic flashlight in hand. The beam pierced into the void and bounced back off something reflective. A camera lens. Someone had been living inside her walls. Jesus, he whispered. But there was more. Carved into the beams were dozens of words, over and over. Keep listening. They'll come through. Don't stop the stories. Lydia stepped back, her knees weak. What is this? She asked. Marcus was pale. I think this wasn't just some psycho living in your walls. This feels wrong. They called the police. The investigation uncovered a narrow tunnel network in the building, sealed off decades ago. One chamber contained a makeshift shrine, candles, bones, hundreds of phone screens nailed to the walls, all looping scary story videos from YouTube, all playing the same narrator. Authorities tried to track the source of the videos. The channel, deleted. IP address, scrambled through servers across continents. And the voice, untraceable. But that night in the hotel, Lydia couldn't help herself. She missed the stories. She needed the thrill, the fear, like an itch. So she searched. The channel was back. One new upload. Welcome back, Lydia. She hesitated, then hit play. The narrator's voice was slower this time, deeper. It curled around her ears like smoke. Lydia thought she could run, it said. She paused the video. Silence. Silence. Her ears rang. Then, from the corner of the room, a whisper, not from the phone. Real. Keep listening. She ran. But it followed. No matter where she went, different hotels, friends' houses, different cities, always the voice would find her. In her earbuds, in radios, even from the mouths of strangers walking by. Don't stop. The videos kept appearing, each one more personal, more invasive. She changed her name, she stopped using devices, but she still heard them, everywhere. One day, she found herself wandering into an old bookstore in a quiet coastal town. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Her reflection looked hollow. The shop was dim, lit only by candles. A sign read, "Used and Occult Books." An old woman behind the counter looked up. "You hear them too," she said, eyes like cracked glass. Lydia froze. "They told you to listen, didn't they?" "Yes," Lydia whispered. "They don't want listeners," the woman said. "They want vessels." Lydia shivered. "Where did it start?" the woman asked. "A video. Just scary stories on YouTube." The woman nodded. "The Netherkin. They speak through fear. Every tale is a doorway, and those who let them in..." She trailed off. Lydia stepped closer. "How do I stop it?" "You don't," the woman said. "You close the door behind you. Let them fully in or lock them out forever." "How?" "Finish the story," she said. "Their story. Speak it. Out loud. Alone. And never stop once you begin, or they'll know." Lydia went back to her motel. That night, she lit a single candle and sat on the floor. She turned on her phone and recorded. And she told everything, from the first video to the whispers, the shadows, the mirror, the crawl space, the bookstore. And as she spoke, the shadows in the corners deepened, the walls pulsed, the air rippled like breath. She felt them drawing near. Dozens of them, eyeless, spindly things, silent and still. She didn't stop, even when the candle flickered, even when her own voice cracked and blood ran from her nose. She kept speaking, until the last word fell from her lips. Silence. The air lifted. The walls relaxed, the candle burned steady, and they were gone. Lydia collapsed, sobbing. She uploaded the recording to a private server, locked it away. She never listened to another scary story again. But sometimes on stormy nights, she swears she hears static in the walls, and a voice, faint and hopeful, "Keep listening."
Story number 2.
The wind howled against the dense pines like a living thing, a voice in the forest that spoke in groans and wails. Riley adjusted her backpack and pushed further along the narrow trail, headlamp flickering against the mist that rolled in from the peaks. It was supposed to be a solo hiking trip. A few days in the mountains to disconnect, recharge. She'd picked Hallows Pass specifically for its remoteness, but no one told her about Griever's Hollow. The ranger at the outpost had warned her. "You'll pass near the hollow," he said. "Don't go off trail. Don't answer if you hear your name. And if you see a girl in white, run." Riley had laughed. Seriously? The ranger hadn't. She remembered his eyes. Pale blue, wide, haunted. Now, miles into the woods, his warning returned like an echo in her brain. Her GPS flickered again. Dead. Like, she cursed, slapping it uselessly. A sharp sound cracked through the trees behind her. She froze. A twig snapped. The forest went still. Then soft. So soft. Riley. Her heart stuttered. The voice was distant, familiar. It was her mother's voice, but her mother had died 6 years ago. "Riley, where are you?" She turned slowly. No one, just mist and shadows. She kept walking, faster now. The voice came again, louder, closer. "Riley." This time it was her best friend, Kara. The same inflection, the same lilt. "Please, don't leave me." She broke into a run. Branches clawed her face and arms. Her boot caught on a root and she fell, slamming onto her shoulder. She rolled over, breath ragged. Standing a few yards away was a girl, pale, soaked, dressed in white, hair hung like wet moss over her face. Riley scrambled backward. Hey, are you okay? The girl tilted her head. Then, in her own voice, perfect and exact, Riley screamed. She bolted through the trees, not caring about the path. The forest twisted, grew unfamiliar. The air thickened, cold as the grave. Shapes moved between the trunks, wrong shapes. Long limbs, too many joints. She stumbled into a clearing and stopped. Dead silence. Then a bell rang once, hollow, metallic. Before her stood a cabin. Old, rotten, covered in vines. She didn't choose to walk toward it. Something pulled her. Inside, the air smelled of earth and iron. The walls were carved with symbols, circles within circles, eyes with no pupils, mouths with no lips, and a chair sat in the center. In it, a girl. The same girl. But closer now. Her skin was stretched too tight. Her eyes black and bottomless. You heard us, she said. Riley shook, stepping back. What are you? We are the grievers, the girl said, rising. Born from sorrow, fed by memory. The walls pulsed. Figures emerged from the shadows. Dozens, all pale, all whispering. You miss them. You ache, the girl said, smiling. You called us. No, Riley whispered. I didn't. You remembered, the girl interrupted. That's all it takes. The whispers became wails. You can join them, she said. Stay with your mother, with Kara. Behind her, Riley saw faces forming in the shadows, her mother's, Kara's, but their eyes were hollow. Black tears ran down their cheeks. Say yes, the girl said, tilting her head, and the pain stops. Riley felt the weight of her grief, the years of nightmares, of guilt and loneliness. It would be easy, so easy, but something inside her pushed back. No, she said. The room screamed. The shadows lunged. The girl's face split open into a gaping maw. Riley ran. She dove through the doorway, into the trees, the screams chasing her, curling through the fog like claws. She didn't stop, didn't look back. She ran until dawn cracked the sky and the mist burned away. When she finally reached the ranger station, she collapsed into the dirt. They found her shivering, muttering about voices in the trees and a girl in white. She never went hiking again. But at night, sometimes she hears a bell. Far off, low, calling, and her mother's voice just behind her bedroom door. Riley?
Story number 3.
The train station was quiet at 2:13 a.m. Nothing but the low hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic squeak of a janitor's mop somewhere down the platform. Nikki stood by the vending machine, punching in the same code for the third time. E7. Still no candy bar. Stupid thing, she muttered. The station was half underground, one of those old New England tunnels they'd never bothered to renovate, cracks in the walls, old soot stains from trains long retired. She glanced at the screen above the tracks. Next train. Delayed. Of course, she checked her phone. Dead. No service. Battery blinking red. As she turned back to the bench, something shifted in the corner of her eye. A man dressed in black standing at the far end of the platform, still as stone, watching her. She pretended not to see, grabbed her bag, and sat down. The fluorescent lights flickered. When they came back on, the man was gone. She looked around, nothing but silence again. The janitor was gone too. Now she really was alone. Another flicker. The lights cut out completely this time, plunging the station into pitch black. Her heartbeat surged in the dark. Then the speaker crackled. Static hissed. Then a voice. Hollow. Childlike. The train is arriving. Please stay behind the yellow line. But the screen still said delayed. There was no sound, no rumble, no headlights down the tunnel. Just that voice. The lights snapped on. Now there were 5 people on the platform. She hadn't heard them arrive, hadn't seen them come down the stairs, all standing, all perfectly still, all facing her. Their faces were wrong. Smooth, like clay before it's shaped. One raised a hand and waved. Nikki stood slowly. This had to be a prank, some performance art crap. She stepped away from the bench, inching toward the stairs. The train is arriving. The voice again, down the tunnel. Headlights blinked on. But not white headlights. Red, and too close together, like eyes. The figures on the platform started swaying side to side in unison like they were being pulled by strings, their heads tilted in time, twitching with unnatural rhythm. The red lights came closer. The sound wasn't like a train, no grinding metal, no rumble, just a low, wet, dragging sound, like flesh across concrete. Nikki backed toward the stairwell. A whisper brushed her ear. No exit. She turned, heart in her throat. No one behind her. She ran. But the stairs stretched endlessly upward. She kept climbing, breath tearing from her lungs, her legs aching, and came out, back on the platform, Same flickering lights, same 5 figures, same red-eyed train now pulling in. Only now the figures had mouths, too wide, too many teeth. They smiled as the train screeched to a stop, its doors peeling open like skin. The inside was dark. Nikki ran along the platform, searching for another exit, a break in the tunnel, anything. One of the figures stepped in front of her, its head twitched sideways like a marionette. "Ticket, please?" Its mouth opened and opened and opened until it was just a void. Hands reached out, Nikki screamed. Everything went black. She woke up on a seat inside the train. It was moving now. Out the window, the world was wrong. The tunnel walls melted into shadows that twisted and blinked. Eyes watched her. Mountains of flesh with roads carved through them. The figures sat around her. Now there were more of them. Dozens. All staring. All smiling. One leaned close. It wore the face of her mother. "Sleep," it whispered. "This is the last train. There are no more stations." The next day, the train arrived at its final stop, completely empty. No passengers. No crew. Just a single bag left on the seat. Inside it, a phone with one recording on it. A girl's voice, breathless, terrified, whispering over and over, "Don't take the last train, please, please, don't take the last train."
Story number 4.
The town of Merriwick wasn't on any modern map. Not anymore. A speck hidden deep in the Appalachian Mountains, surrounded by thickets so dense they swallowed sunlight. They said the town was founded by coal miners in the late 1800s, then abandoned after something happened inside the mines. People stopped talking about Merriwick, but people like Trevor liked stories like that. He ran a small but loyal horror podcast called The Last Broadcast. He hunted for urban legends, local hauntings, anything strange. So when he got an anonymous email with one line, "Go to Merriwick, they still sing down there," he packed his gear and drove east. Trevor's GPS stopped working 20 miles out. The road turned to gravel. The gravel became dirt. And then he was in Merriwick. Trees bowed over crooked houses. The wind carried a smell like rot and coal dust. The town was silent, not a bird in the air. He parked by an old general store and turned on his mic. "Okay, listeners," he whispered into his recorder. "This place is dead. Every house boarded up, not a single soul in sight, but I swear, I just heard humming." He followed the sound. It led him past rusted swings, a church swallowed in ivy, and finally to the edge of a gaping pit at the end of the street. The mine. The humming grew louder, off-key, wrong. He climbed down the access ladder, rusty rungs moaning under his weight. Inside it was damp and hot, despite the chill outside. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper and deeper. His flashlight caught carvings on the walls, symbols he didn't recognize, circles within circles, spirals like coiled intestines. Then the singing stopped. Something else started. Footsteps. He turned off his light and held his breath. Something shuffled down the tunnel, then whispering, not in English, not in anything human. Trevor turned and started to climb back up. A hand grabbed his ankle. Cold. Thin. Grimy. He kicked and screamed, scrambling until he was back in daylight, gasping. He ran. Didn't stop until he was in the car, peeling out of that cursed town. But the whispering didn't stop, even in the car, even on the highway, even back at his apartment in Boston. That night, he listened to the recording from Merriwick. Static, breathing, then humming, and then his own voice. But he hadn't said the words, his voice whispering, "We brought you back." He the same thing. "We brought you back." The next morning, Trevor woke to find coal dust in his sheets, under his fingernails, in his mouth. He tried to shower. The water came out black. He looked in the mirror, and for a split second, his eyes weren't his. They were wide and sunken and burned red around the edges. That night, during a live podcast episode, listeners noticed something was off. Trevor's voice was slow, flat, like something else was speaking through him. At one point, dead in the middle of an episode about haunted forests, he stopped and said, "Do you hear them? They're closer now." Then he smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, like it had been carved on. He leaned close to the mic and whispered, "They followed me out." The episode cut off there. He never posted again. Weeks later, someone broke into his apartment. The place was empty, no sign of Trevor, no gear, just coal dust smeared across the walls, spelling a single word, "Sing." Every year since, on the anniversary of that final episode, Trevor's voice appears on the podcast feed. No one uploads it. No one knows how it gets there. Each year, it gets quieter, more distorted, more hungry. And in the background, if you listen close, you can hear the chorus rising, voices in the dark, singing in the language of the mine. Calling, waiting.
Story number 5.
Hit Black Hollow just after midnight. Lightning split the sky like a jagged wound, and thunder cracked the earth. But inside the old Dalton house, nestled deep in the woods and far from any paved road, the storm wasn't the loudest thing that night. It was the knocking. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Then silence. Jess had been house-sitting for her aunt and uncle for the week. It was a favor she now deeply regretted. The house was massive, ancient, and buried under years of dust and silence. Her phone barely worked, and the storm had knocked the power out hours ago. She lit another candle and walked to the front door, heart thudding. No one should have been out here. No one even could be. She peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just darkness and rain. She exhaled shakily and turned away. 3 knocks again, but this time not at the door. At the window. She spun around, every hair on her body rising. The window near the staircase was fogged up, and in the condensation there were finger marks. Long ones. 4 of them. Dragged down from the top to the bottom. She hadn't heard anyone come inside, and no one could reach that window. It was on the 2nd floor. Jess stepped back. The marks started to appear again. Not from the outside. From the inside. She backed into the hallway, nearly dropping her candle. "Hello?" she called out, voice cracking. "Is someone there?" Silence. Until the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed once. Then whispered, "Don't turn around." She froze, her breath hitched in her throat. The voice had come from behind her. Inches away. She turned. No one. But the candle flickered wildly, and the air around her had turned ice cold. She ran into the study and locked the door, barricading it with a heavy chair. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. 1 bar. She tried to call her aunt. No ring, no connection. Instead, her voicemail played, but not the recording she had set. Just a slow, wet breathing, and a voice she didn't recognize saying, "We've missed you, Jess." The call ended. Something moved behind the bookshelves. The shelves were built into the wall, towering and full of dust-covered tomes. One of the books, a thick red one, was vibrating. Buzzing. She stepped closer. Her name was written on the spine. Not printed, carved. She reached for it, and the moment her fingers touched the cover, the bookshelf clicked and creaked open like a door. Beyond it was a narrow staircase leading down, and down, and down. The air that rose from it smelled like decay and old fire. Jess should have run, but something pulled her. The steps groaned under her weight. Each footfall felt like it echoed through centuries. At the bottom, a room, stone walls dripping with moisture, candles freshly lit in a perfect circle, and inside the circle, drawings, dozens of them, crayon, ink, pencil, all of Jess as a child, standing in front of the Dalton house, sleeping in her crib, smiling at birthday parties, photos she knew had never been taken. She stepped closer. Her childhood voice echoed from the walls. "I remember now." Then a whisper from behind her, "And we remember you." She turned and saw herself, but wrong. Pale, hair soaked in black ichor, eyes pure white, grinning. It stepped forward. Jess stumbled back. "We never left," it said. "You did, but they made you forget." "Forget what?" Jess whispered, trembling. "That this was home," it said. "That we loved you first." The candles flared and the room filled with shadows. Figures emerged from the walls, hands outstretched, mouths sewn shut, eyes leaking black tears. They surrounded her, whispering in dozens of voices, some hers, some not. She screamed and ran, up the stairs, through the study, out into the storm. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. When she looked back, the Dalton house was gone. Only trees remained. An endless, writhing forest. She called the police. When they came, there was no house, no clearing, no trace. Just her, soaked and shaking, babbling about drawings and voices and the thing that wore her face. They took her away. Now she's in a white room, and they say she's safe. But every night, just before the lights go out, she hears it. 3 slow knocks on the door, and a whisper from the dark, "Time to come back, Jess. We remember."
Story number 6.
The first coffin arrived on a Monday. It sat on Elise Harper's front porch like a misplaced delivery, a long wooden box wrapped in thick rope. No return address. No markings except for a single name burned into the lid. Elise Harper. She stared at it, the morning air thick and still. A prank. It had to be. She lived alone, taught high school literature, had no enemies. No reason for this. Yet here it was, heavy and silent, waiting like a patient thing. Her hands trembled as she bent down, gripping the rope. The wood was old but smooth, like something carved years ago but kept fresh. She swallowed hard and opened it. Inside lay herself, pale, motionless, wearing the same pajamas she had slept in last night. Elise stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. It was her, down to the freckles on her collarbone, the small scar on her wrist, the birthmark on her hip. But she was breathing, shallow, almost imperceptible. She reached out a shaking hand. Her double's eyes snapped open. Elise screamed and fell backward, scrambling away. The figure inside the coffin blinked up at her, lips parting as if to speak. But then, the doorbell rang. Elise jerked her head toward the front door, heart hammering. Who the hell? She turned back to the coffin. Empty. The ropes lay undone, the inside of the box bare. Her breath hitched. The doorbell rang again. This time 3 slow knocks followed it. She ran. Not to the door, to the back of the house, locking herself in the bathroom. Hands shaking, she dialed 911. No service. The knocks came again. Not at the front door this time, at the bathroom door. Her stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. No one had come inside. Elise, a voice whispered, her own voice. Let me in. She bit back a sob. Who are you? You already know, it whispered. I'm the one who belongs here. The doorknob rattled. The wood groaned. Then, silence. Minutes passed. Hours? Finally, Elise forced herself to move. She pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. She opened it an inch. The house was dark. The front door stood wide open, the night stretching beyond. The coffin was gone. The only sign it had been there at all was the faint outline of dust where it had sat. Elise didn't sleep that night. The second coffin arrived on Tuesday. This time it was in her living room. She woke to find it sitting neatly on the rug, ropes wrapped tight around it, no sound of it being dragged inside, no sign of forced entry. She didn't want to open it, didn't want to see who or what lay inside this time. But she did, and inside, she saw herself again, not sleeping this time, screaming. Mouth frozen in a silent howl, eyes wide and black. She slammed the lid shut and ran, but the lights flickered, and she heard breathing, right behind her. A cold hand brushed her shoulder. Elise, her voice whispered, it's almost time. She ran upstairs, barricaded herself in her room, didn't sleep, didn't move. Morning came. The coffin was gone. By Wednesday, she was too tired to cry. She called in sick to work, didn't answer the door, didn't check the locks anymore. She knew it didn't matter. The third coffin arrived just before midnight. This time, it wasn't empty, and it wasn't closed. She found it in the hallway, lid flung open as if something had climbed out. The ropes were cut, and on the walls, scratched deep into the paint, were 3 words, I took your place. Elise's vision blurred. The house felt different now, colder, hollow, like she wasn't supposed to be here anymore. Something moved in the corner of her eye. She turned and saw herself standing at the top of the stairs, smiling. No, not smiling, grinning. Elise stepped back, throat tight. The thing wearing her face cocked its head. You should have gotten in the first time, it whispered. Elise ran, down the stairs, through the front door, into the night. She didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't even take her keys. She just kept running. By the time she reached the nearest town, the sun was rising. The old motel she found smelled of dust and cigarette smoke, but she didn't care. She locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and finally, she let herself breathe. She collapsed onto the bed, heart slowing. It was over. Had to be. Then, a knock. She squeezed her eyes shut. Another knock. Tears burned down her cheeks. Then, the sound of cardboard scraping the floor. She opened her eyes, and there, inside her motel room, sitting against the door, was another coffin. Her name burned into the lid, the ropes already undone, and from inside, something knocked back.
Story number 7.
The fog rolled into Greystone Hollow just after dusk, thick and unnatural, swallowing sound and bending light. It came early that October, weeks before the townspeople expected it, and it never rolled back out. Nora Bell was the first to notice something was wrong. She'd been walking her dog, Jasper, down the edge of the woods like she did every evening. The fog, heavy as wet wool, curled around her legs and muffled the jingling of his collar. He darted into the trees, chasing something she couldn't see. Jasper, she called. Silence. No birds, no wind, no distant traffic hum, just a stillness so complete it felt like the world had stopped spinning. She heard a low whine, followed by a sharp yelp, then nothing. She ran into the woods, flashlight beam cutting through the fog in narrow shafts. She found Jasper's collar hanging from a branch. It was warm. There was blood on the bark, and below the branch, embedded in the dirt, was a footprint. but not a human one. Not exactly. It had toes. Long, spindly, too many of them, and claws. She ran, back to town. But the fog had thickened. Streetlights flickered and dimmed. Windows were dark. Doors were locked. She pounded on Mrs. Elms's house. No answer. She banged on the diner window. Empty booths. Plates of food half-eaten. Coffee still steaming. She screamed, cried, begged, but the town was silent. Then from the fog came the sound of a bell. Low, echoing, distant but getting closer. She turned and saw them. Figures. Tall and thin, their limbs bending wrong, skin like wax stretching too tightly over their joints. Their eyes shone like headlights, colorless and bright. Each wore a black mask with a stitched smile. They walked slowly, and in their hands they held mirrors. Nora ran, but every road turned back into fog. Every alley twisted into another, until she stood in front of her own house, out of breath, sweating cold. The door was open. Inside, the lights flickered. Her phone was on the table. She grabbed it. No signal. But the screen lit up with a message. Look outside. She did, and saw herself, standing in the fog, looking back through the window, but different. Hair longer, eyes dead. Blood smeared across her chest. It lifted its hand and smiled, then pointed behind her. She turned and saw the mirror. It hadn't been there before, 7 feet tall, framed in black wood that pulsed like it was breathing, and in its reflection, nothing. No couch, no lamps, no her, just darkness. Then the reflection changed. She saw the diner, then the woods, then her parents' old house, burned down 10 years ago. And in every scene, in every shifting image, she was there, watching, standing, not moving, not alive. She backed away. The mirror rippled. A hand reached out from it, black as smoke, stretching too far, fingers curling toward her like hooks. The door slammed shut. The lights went out. The bell rang inside the house now. Nora screamed and threw the mirror down. It didn't break. It laughed, not a sound but a vibration deep in her chest. Something was coming through. She ran to the basement, the only door she could lock. Down the stairs, breath ragged, heartbeat a drum in her ears. And in the darkness she remembered, this wasn't the first time. The fog came every 20 years. Her mother used to whisper it to her on stormy nights, thinking she was asleep. The hollow eats the forgotten, she said, and leaves a reflection behind. The basement bulb buzzed to life. In front of her stood a mirror, a new one, and in it, herself again. Except this time it moved first. The reflection lifted its hand and slit its own throat. Blood poured across the glass, but none of it reached the floor. Nora screamed and turned to run, but the basement was gone. Only fog now, and whispers, and mirrors. Dozens, hundreds, stretching out in every direction, each one showing her, a different her, dying in different ways, and somewhere in the distance the bell kept ringing. She was never seen again. The next morning the fog lifted. The town was empty. Not destroyed, not chaotic, just still. Plates sat on tables, showers ran, radios played static, but no people, no sounds, only the mirrors, one in every home, each one showing a smiling face, each one whispering, "Come closer, we remember you."
Story number 8.
The storm had passed by the time Connor and Marla arrived at the Lakehurst cabin. The trees dripped from recent rain, and the gravel crackled under their tires as they pulled up the long, winding drive. They hadn't planned this trip. The cabin had belonged to Marla's uncle, a man neither of them had met. Eccentric, reclusive, and long declared missing. The deed passed to Marla when the rest of her family declined it. She thought it might be good for them. A break from the city, a chance to breathe. Maybe fix it up, sell it later. But some places don't want to be fixed. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Not rot, exactly. Something older. Mold. Damp wood. Earth turned inside out. The second thing was the journal on the kitchen table. Leather-bound, stained at the corners, pages bloated from moisture. A pen lay beside it, crusted with something brownish red. Marla opened it to the last written page. It's in the walls now. No doors, no windows, just breathing. I hear myself walking when I'm still. I'm not alone. I am me, but also other. If anyone finds this, don't stay the night. Marla laughed it off, but her hands trembled as she closed the book. Old people get weird, she said. Connor didn't laugh. He hated the place immediately. That night, they tried to settle in. The cabin groaned constantly, wood expanding and contracting in the cold. The fireplace refused to draw smoke properly. They unplugged the TV when it started flickering on and off by itself. At 2:13 a.m., Connor woke up to footsteps. Not outside. Upstairs. But the cabin had no second floor. He sat up slowly, the mattress creaking beneath him. Marla slept beside him, unmoving. The steps creaked again, directly above them. He looked up and froze. There was a ceiling hatch. He was certain it hadn't been there earlier. They would have noticed, would have remembered. The footsteps stopped. A soft, deliberate knock came from above the hatch. 3 times. Connor didn't move. Then the hatch clicked and swung open. But nothing came down. No ladder, no dust, just darkness. Then something dropped from the opening. It wasn't a person. It wasn't anything Connor had ever seen. It slithered soundlessly to the floor. A long, sinewy shape with arms too thin and too many joints. Its head was featureless. Its body rippled like fabric in water. Connor couldn't move. The thing hovered over Marla and whispered her name, but not in a voice he recognized. It sounded like him, like his own voice, distorted and wet, being funneled through a drain. He lunged at it, but the moment his hands touched its body, he was somewhere else. Not the bedroom, not the cabin. A hallway, endless, black. He turned but saw only door after door stretching into the distance, each one labeled with a single word: fear, loss, hunger, truth, home. The air pressed in on him. One door opened on its own. Truth. He stepped inside and saw himself. Sitting at the kitchen table, writing in the journal, the pen scratched the paper violently as if dragged by someone who didn't want to write. He moved closer, saw what he was writing. I let it in. I let it wear me. I'm watching Marla sleep. I'm under her skin now. Connor screamed. The version of him at the table looked up and smiled. It wasn't his smile. It was wider. Wrong. Too many teeth. Then Connor was back in the bedroom, alone. The hatch was gone. Marla was gone. The journal was open beside him, and new words had been scrawled in frantic loops. Only one can leave. The other stays. You know this now. You've always known. Connor ran out of the cabin and into the woods. The trees shifted behind him, branches arching like claws. He never found the car. He never found the road, just more woods and more doors. Eventually, search parties came. They found the cabin sealed. No signs of struggle. No bodies. But they did find the journal. The last entry, fresh ink. She wears me now. She left as me. I hope she forgets, but I think she remembers. In the city, Marla wakes up every night at 2:13 a.m. She doesn't remember what happened, but she sometimes finds herself writing things she didn't mean to. Sometimes she looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize her own smile. And once, just once, she found a note on her pillow in her own handwriting. It's still inside. Don't let anyone else in, not even yourself.
Story number 9.
They called it the 13th door. It wasn't a game, not really. More like a dare passed around by bored teenagers in the small, dead-end town of Langley Hollow, a place that had more missing person reports than streetlights. The story went like this. At the edge of the forest, down a dirt trail long swallowed by ivy and thyme, there was an abandoned house. It had been burned once. Rebuilt, abandoned again. Everyone who owned it either disappeared or went mad. Locals said it had 13 doors, though no one ever made it past the 12th, because the 13th didn't open for everyone, only for those it wanted, which is exactly what drew Violet, Shane, and Nate out there on a cold October night, flashlights in hand, breath fogging in the air like ghosts trying to get back inside their bodies. We walk in, Shane said, the leader by default. We find all 13 doors. No big deal. Violet didn't speak. She never did during these kinds of things, but she was always the first to go in. The house loomed before them, its porch sagging like a tired mouth, windows blind with dust. But the door, it opened when she touched it. Inside, it was colder than outside. The air felt heavy, like they were walking underwater. They moved through the first room, counting out loud. 1, Nate said, pointing to the cracked bathroom door hanging off its hinges. 2, Shane added, tapping a door that led to the basement. 3, a closet, and so it went until they reached 12, an upstairs hallway. Nothing at the end but a wall. 12, Shane said. So where's lucky 13? That's when the wall started breathing. It pulsed outward, then in like a lung beneath wallpaper, and slowly a line formed, vertical from ceiling to floor. A door. No knob, no hinges, just a smooth black surface. Nate stepped back. Nope, no way. But Violet reached out. The second her fingers touched the black surface, it melted open. Beyond it was nothing. Not darkness, not space, just nothing. Like looking into a cut in the world. Shane laughed nervously. Looks like the 13th door doesn't go anywhere. Then Violet stepped through it. No, Nate shouted, reaching for her, but she was already gone. Gone in the space of a blink. The door pulsed again, then closed. There was no seam, only wall. They called for her for hours. Shane pounded on the wall until his hands bled. Nate tore through the house, looking for hidden exits, another staircase, a trapdoor, anything. But Violet was gone. They ran, out of the house, into the trees, all the way back to town. When they got to Nate's house, panting and cold, his mother blinked at him like she didn't know who he was. "Where's your friend?" she asked. "Shane's right." Nate turned and saw nothing. Shane was gone. He had been right behind him. He called his name, sprinted back outside, no footprints in the dew, no sound, no trace. Just quiet. And when Nate looked up at the sky, he realized the stars were wrong. Constellations twisted, unfamiliar. He didn't go home. Instead, he went back to the house, back to the 13th door. It was open. Violet blinked. She was standing in the same hallway, alone, no sign of Shane, no Nate. She turned to go back down the stairs, but the house was wrong. The walls were now pulsing. The light through the windows was crimson, and she could swear she heard whispers behind them. She tried the front door. It opened to a hallway. Not the outside, a different hallway, with doors on either side. More than 13 now. Dozens. Each one humming softly, each one watching. She walked forward. One door slowly creaked open. She looked inside and saw herself sitting in a hospital bed, old, alone, muttering about doors. Another door opened. She saw a funeral, a coffin, her name on the headstone. Shane and Nate were there, except their eyes were wrong. Hollow. Another door, a mirror. Just her reflection, except it smiled when she didn't. Violet backed away. The doors opened one by one as she passed. Visions, nightmares, realities, all of them hers. All of them waiting to be chosen. The 13th door wasn't a place. It was a decision. Which version of yourself will you become? Which version will you run from? Which version will take your place? Behind her, something whispered, "You stepped through. Now you have to choose." She turned around, and standing there was herself. Or maybe not. It looked like her, but the eyes were too deep. The smile was too wide. The skin didn't quite move right. The thing held out its hand. Violet screamed, and everything went dark. Weeks later, the house was found again, but it only had 12 doors. No sign of a 13th. No Violet, no Shane, no Nate. Just a single black doorknob in the dirt out front, half buried, like it had been torn off and left behind. Sometimes at night, people swear they hear knocking behind their bedroom walls. Always 13 knocks, always followed by a whisper. Just open it. You've already chosen.
Story number 10.
It started with a knock. 3 soft raps at 3:17 a.m., waking Evelyn from a dead sleep in her aging Victorian home, the one she inherited after her grandmother passed away. She sat up in bed, disoriented, expecting the sound to repeat. It didn't. She waited, heart thudding, straining her ears. Silence. She lived alone. The nearest neighbor was over half a mile down the road, and it was raining hard. Thunder rolled in the distance like the low growl of something ancient. Then the knock came again. 3 knocks, but closer. She grabbed her phone. No signal. She tiptoed out of bed and crept toward the hallway, wrapped in a blanket. The hardwood floors creaked beneath her bare feet. The 3rd knock came from inside the house, somewhere upstairs. She backed into her bedroom and locked the door, heart hammering. She told herself it was nothing, a pipe, old wood settling, her imagination. Then her phone screen lit up. A notification. Front door camera, motion detected. But she didn't have a front door camera. She opened the feed anyway. The screen showed her own face, asleep in bed, exactly as she had been before she woke. Then she saw the bedroom door on the screen open slowly, even though in real life it was locked. Something tall and black slipped inside, its limbs wrong, bending too far, too loosely. Its face wasn't a face, just a smooth, pale shape with a mouth that stretched from ear to ear. Evelyn screamed. The screen went dark. She turned. Her bedroom door was still locked, still closed, but she could hear breathing on the other side, and footsteps pacing slowly back and forth. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, she tore through the attic and the basement, looking for signs of entry, cameras, anything. Nothing. Just dust, rot, and old furniture. Then she found the box, buried behind insulation in the attic. A small wooden chest with no latch, no lock, just carved symbols along the edges she didn't recognize. Inside was a black and white photo of her grandmother standing in the very same house, pregnant and smiling at the camera. Next to her stood a figure, too tall, blurred, featureless. She flipped the photo over. One word was scrawled in faded ink. Watcher. That night, the knocks returned. 3:17 a.m., 3 knocks. Then silence. Then the bedroom door clicked open. Even though she had locked it, chained it. She held her breath, didn't move, didn't blink. The door creaked, and in walked the Watcher. Except it didn't, floated. Feet barely touching the ground. It hovered at the foot of her bed, head tilting as if studying her. Then it reached into her chest. She screamed, but no sound came out. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then suddenly she sat up, gasping, back in bed, sweating. Alone. Just a dream. But her chest ached, and there were fingerprints on the inside of her window pane. She began to notice things after that. Mirrors didn't reflect correctly. Sometimes they showed rooms she wasn't in. Her reflection would smile when she didn't. Voices whispered her name when she ran the water. Every clock in the house stopped at 3:17 a.m., even when replaced. And always the knocking. It followed her. To work. To the grocery store. Once during the day, she saw a man knocked down on the sidewalk by something invisible. His eyes rolled back. He screamed one word before convulsing. Watcher. She fled. Locked herself inside the house, boarded up the windows, painted over the mirrors, removed every clock. Still, the knocking returned. Now it was inside her head, 3 knocks again and again, and the dreams, nightmares, memories that weren't hers, images of old rituals, burning candles, chanting in languages she couldn't understand. She saw her grandmother, young, terrified, holding a mirror and whispering, "I gave it my name. It wants more." Evelyn began to forget who she was. She looked in the mirror one night and didn't recognize her own eyes. They were too dark, too deep, and they blinked before she did. On the final night, Evelyn prepared. Salt lines, candles, symbols from the attic carved into the floors. She waited in the center of the room, surrounded by the photo, the box, the mirror, at 3:17 a.m. The air thickened. The door burst open, and the Watcher came. But this time, she stood her ground. "You took my grandmother," she whispered. "You won't take me." The Watcher leaned forward, and then spoke, for the first time. "You are your grandmother." Evelyn froze. The candles blew out, the floor split beneath her feet, and the world peeled open. She saw herself in 100 mirrors, in 100 lives. Sometimes Evelyn, sometimes Ruth, sometimes others. Always watched, always chosen. The Watcher reached for her one last time, and she didn't run. She reached back, they touched, and merged. No one saw Evelyn again. The house stood empty for weeks until the realtor opened it for an inspection. Inside, everything was gone, except for a mirror in the bedroom. It was old, cracked, but sometimes late at night, if you look into it too long, you'll see someone standing behind you, even if you're alone, and sometimes they knock. 3 times. At 3:17 a.m.